With a legacy as big as the Man of Steel himself, it's no easy task for a studio even as big as Warner Brothers to please everyone in the audience. That being said, you would think the formula should have been perfected by now, seeing as, I don't know, we've had a multitude of different approaches to the character over the past 50 plus years, and not to mention a plethora of other superhero properties to draw inspiration from, or even to draw contrast from. Ironically, I believe it is these very ideas that have served to hinder this latest attempt at cracking the story of the Boy in Blue on the big screen. Now, I'm going to break down exactly what I mean by that and even go into spoilers on the second half of the video. So yeah, this is going to be a non-spoiler and spoiler-filled review and a light breakdown rant, whatever, of the film in question, James Gunn's Superman, or what some are calling Superman's James Gunn, and we'll get into why they say that. So let's talk about it. Now, I've seen this movie twice, and I mentioned this up front because had I done this review after my first watch, I would have completely and unforgivingly bashed and torn this film to shreds. I honestly was shocked when I first watched this. I was looking at my friend next to me like, what the hell is going on? We did not expect this kind of film. Although I should have seen the writing on the wall, seeing as it is a James Gunn movie and it is a complete reaction to Man of Steel being received the way it was. Truly, this film, upon first viewing, slaughtered my expectations harder than a McDonald's factory farm. And in true fast food fashion, guys, my eyes told me the food looked good, I promise. But once I ate it, I nearly shit myself in the theater, and not in a good way. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that this film is a feast for the eyes, for sure. But it ultimately ended up, for me, feeling like empty calories, despite kind of enjoying the film more on the second watch. And there's a lot of good scenes in the movie. We'll talk about that. Now, I give this film somewhere around a 6 out of 10, maybe borderline 7 if I'm feeling good, but no higher than that. I'd say 6. And this is how I felt upon first watching the film. Actually, probably even lower, more around a 5 out of 10. And I still feel sort of similar even after watching it for a second time. Although I do understand the film a little more, being able to understand what I was about to serve into my palate, that really helps. Knowing what you're getting going in really helps to digest this film, if you will. Now, the pacing on this film is extremely jarring the first time around, with the film leaving too little time to settle itself or draw focus, even though there are some moments like that. Now, our time with the Clark Kent side of Superman felt extremely short-lived. I mean, I believe there's only one entire scene taking place with him and his cohorts at the Daily Planet towards the beginning of the film, and that's all we get of Clark outside of a couple moments with Lois. That's it. That's all we get. I guess you get him with Pa Kent and Ma Kent too, but that's a really, really short scene as well. Point is, he's barely Clark in this movie, but he also is Clark the entire movie in a way, and I'll tell you why. Ironically, however, we do get to spend the entire movie with Clark in a different way, by way of Superman. What I mean by this is that in this film, the line between Clark and the Superman persona is extremely blurred. Like, they're basically the same exact person, whereas in previous adaptations, and a lot of times in the comics, from what I remember, I didn't read a lot of them, but I have read some, the two sides of Superman, the Clark and the Superman, feel completely different, or at least dramatically different, to where you kind of get two people in one. This felt like, I don't know, this felt like the Peter Parker version of Superman. Always lighthearted, lacking gravitas for the most part, and kind of just being the complete underdog the entire time, to whereas I miss that powerful stoicism, at least in doses, that we could get from the Superman character. Now, I believe this was a reaction to previous iterations of the film. This one attempts to humanize the character to the point where we almost completely lose our reverence and respect for the Superman side of Clark. The supporting characters and the world around him, for the most part, also seem to take on this attitude towards the Man of Steel himself, who I would rather call the Man of Feels after watching James Gunn's rendition in this 2025 DC film. Now, in this film, it feels as if Superman is constantly at the whims of other characters, constantly being outstaged, outwitted, and even at times slightly embarrassed by the situations he finds himself in. I mean, the best scene in the movie is not even his scene, and we'll get to that. It feels like this because this is the most vulnerable iteration that we have seen on screen yet. Set in a world full of overpowered fantasy tech, other more experienced heroes, and a Lex Luthor who already has everything at his disposal ready to defeat Superman at the very start of the film. This was the part that almost completely lost me the first time around. It was an approach I was extremely unprepared for. When watching the film a second time, however, I was able to view the story in a different light. I understood where it was coming from and what it was going for, but even then, I feel the film misses its mark when attempting to be anything more than a standard surface level episode in a much, much broader pre-existing Superman saga. The theme of this story is focused on the morality of Superman, with Lois Lane at the forefront of the deep dive into his approach to justice. But beyond one 10-minute dialogue scene between the two of them, we don't truly get to unravel what should have been a highly tangled web of the world's thoughts on Superman. Everything is very surface level. Everything is very instant reactionary. Nothing is truly dug deeper than the surface in this movie, for lack of better words, literally. Yes, it does feel like a comic book. There's a lot of people out there saying this feels like a comic book. It does. It feels like a story I would read while in line at the doctor's office, picking a comic off the book rack as a kid. The visuals are bright, colorful, and at times just plain fun to look at. Can't lie. It's a fun looking movie. Now, the characters are intriguing enough, but they do, like I said, lack a certain depth that would have lived in a more fleshed out and serious script. But James Gunn and serious don't go together as well as they should, especially for a Superman film. I thought he might have been better in a maybe assistant writing and producing role rather than a main writer, main director, main producer role. The James Gunn nature almost supersedes the Superman nature in this film, and that can be a huge problem when you're trying to define one of the most iconic characters in the universe. Now, motivations are often stated on screen instead of shown on screen. You know, the whole show don't tell thing, it's kind of reversed in this film because it is so overstuffed. They need the dialogue to be simple and to the point to make sure you get the point. But it doesn't have impact when it's like that, for me at least. The world and characters around Superman, for the most part, outside of a few shining moments, they seem kind of robotically controlled by the script. Kind of like a bad puppet, a poor imitation of humanity at best. Especially the actual world, like the citizens, the news, everything that surrounds the story seems like it's contrived and forced. It doesn't feel natural. That's what I'm trying to say. There's a very, very key moment in the movie, the crux of the film almost, with Lex Luthor and a piece of key information relating to Superman that totally took me out of the entire film and broke the world building for me completely in an instant. We'll go over that too. Now, on a different note, let's talk about how this film sits within the meta culture of its counterparts. With the history of DC and MCU films from the past 20 years, it's become clear that studios no longer want to ignore the fact that these heroes do not live in a vacuum, which is fine, What I mean by that, though, is with properties like the MCU, the Avengers, the previous DC universe, the Justice League, and even Amazon's TV series The Boys, and the CW for that matter, the studios seem to believe it's almost a negative thing to make a truly standalone solo film with extreme focus on a single hero. Now, I know James Gunn is trying to build up the universe instantly to jump into the action of things, but yeah, it feels a little unfocused. Now, what I'm trying to get at is, yes, this film does heavily hinge on the appearance of the Justice Gang. Even the main theme of the film kind of revolves around them as well. Now, while the first appearance of the Justice Gang in this film caught me supremely off guard, I did grow to understand why James Gunn so heavily implemented them into the story. Even if Hawkgirl was heavily disappointing, I don't know what I would have expected. She's truly the side character of all side characters. Sorry, I didn't enjoy any second of her on screen. I wish they would mute her scream. I don't think it had a point to it outside of relating her to a hawk. Usually she has powers with her scream or something, but in this movie, she just screams because hawk. Yeah. Every time I heard her scream, I almost went to the restroom and never came back. Now, they wasted her character, whatever. That's fine. She really didn't need to be in the film, except to make the Justice Gang seem slightly more robust than just Green Lantern and Mr. Terrific, I guess, who, by the way, absolutely stole the freaking show. The gang is just there to be somewhat of a foil to Superman's perspective on heroism, on both a micro-situational and global sense. A plotline that, on a surface level, ultimately serves to shine a light on Superman's philosophy of save everyone no matter the cost, but fails to deliver on the quickly forgotten micro situational side of things. We'll get into that as well. I know that's a bit of a word soup right there, but I digress. What I am trying to say here is that these characters aren't simply in the film just to do pointless world building. They do serve a purpose, although it's not explored in any extremely profound manner, fleshed out manner, if you will. Overall, this story seems to be a direct reaction to the dark, brooding, and isolated version that we received from Zack Snyder over 10 years ago. But I find the film to be somewhat of an overcorrection, lacking focus, emotional depth. Even though it says it has emotional depth, you don't feel the emotional depth as much as you should. And it even lacks reverence for the main character himself at times. There are shining moments, but overall, I didn't feel the respect for Superman was quite there, even though we're already on year 3, spoiler, of Superman in this universe. He should have a lot of respect by now. And it should be very hard to tear that respect away from him in an instant, which also, spoilers, does happen in this movie. Okay, now that my vague and extremely cluttered spoiler-free thoughts have been expelled from my mind, let's go ahead and break down the film from a plot perspective and sort of just do a spoiler ramble about the film. Now, the film opens with a title card, info dumping the audience to set the stage. It's revealed that the metahumans have existed for quite a while now, and Superman has existed as the iconic form of himself, Superman, to the public for 3 years now. And 3 days ago, he lost his first fight to what's called the Hammer of Boravia. Boravia being a foreign country who is invading another foreign country by way of Lex Luthor scheming to kill Superman. The whole Boravia invading a foreign country is revealed to be set up by Lex so that he can have a excuse to kill Superman. So yeah, that whole plot line is somewhat contrived. He already had the ability to kill Superman. He just needed a publicly justified reason to do so, I guess. That's fine. That's fine. Now we figure out that the Hammer of Boravia very quickly is actually Ultraman. There's a lot of layers. Well, there's 3 layers to the Hammer of Boravia. There's the Hammer of Boravia, Ultraman, and inside of the Ultraman suit is a clone of David Corenswet's Superman. A dumb version of him. A really dumb version. In fact, so dumb that Lex Luthor has to use a series of vitamins or bra sizes or battleship callouts to control the stupid clone. He's shouting out like 34C, B12. I'm not making this up. He's shouting out like he's literally playing Battleship with the clone. And the reason I have a problem with this is how does this dumb version of Superman, this Ultraman, how does he have time to let Lex react, let Lex pick a move, and then receive the move, interpret it, and perform the move before Superman could knock his head off or fly him to outer space, where his signal would probably be out of range or take too long to get to him. There's just so many plot holes and nitpicks you can make with the whole Lex Luthor controls the clone with commands thing, but I digress. It's cool enough. It gives Lex basically some autonomy in the fight scenes instead of just him, standing around and looking at a monitor. That's the reason they did it. They stray away from logic in this film a lot just so they can have cool or funny things on screen, which is a very James Gunn thing to do, which is why I say the James Gunn isms supersede the Superman isms in this film, or what I would like to see in a Superman film versus what we get in a James Gunn film. It's almost too James Gunn to be a Superman film at some points, which is entertaining, but it misses the mark for me. If you go into the film understanding the paradigm that this film operates on, it becomes a lot more acceptable and even entertaining. So what I'm saying is, yes, this is a turn your brain off popcorn munching type of movie, and you simply have to view it through that lens to understand it at its core. Now, after learning that Superman has lost a fight, we see him crash landing in the Arctic, beat up from his loss to the Hammer of Boravia 3 days ago. So I'm wondering, did it take him 3 days to get here, or was there another fight 3 days ago? I'm pretty sure there was another fight 3 days ago, and this was his reattempt at fighting the Hammer of Boravia, this time at a different location. It's very unclear. Side note, I wish we would have seen an intro to the film where we build up the reverence and power scaling and position of Superman in a global sense, so that when we do ultimately see his, second act downfall, we know where he was coming from Instead, we're just told that in a title card, he's been Superman for 3 years, which lacks any and all emotional impact to build up the character before we break him down. This film was just simply breaking down Superman before we even built him up realistically. So I feel like we were missing that entire context. The build-up, and it would have been nice to see him actually losing his first fight rather than seeing him immediately then lose a second time, which he does after he gets recharged by the sun, which we'll talk about. Basically, Superman crash lands in the Arctic. Krypto drags him to the Fortress of Solitude, which I never understood how the Fortress of Solitude works in any Superman property. It's just there. Just accept it. I know there's a bunch of comic book explanations for it. In this film, no explanation. It's just there. So just accept it. A lot of stuff is like that. We're just in the universe. Just accept it, which is fine, but it's jarring. So you have to be kind of prepared for that kind of aspect. We've seen this scene in the trailers heavily and even basically fully played out in clips for the marketing. Krypto drags him back. The robots, the Superman robots, get Clark and they magnify the sun to heal him up faster than he normally would, which is actually a very cool, science fiction, science fantasy mechanic that they've installed in this film that I like. It gives him a sense of weakness and it also gives him a source of strength so that we can understand the power scaling and how he's able to be defeated. So well done with the setup there. I like that part. Now, Alan Tudyk plays one of the Superman robots in this film, and I can't help but thinking he's just playing K2SO Lite Edition. The voice is, yes, it is Alan Tudyk's voice, but the nature of how he uses his own voice is almost identical to K2SO. You could extract lines from this film, especially towards the end of the film, and tell me with a blindfold on that this was a deleted scene of K2SO, and I would just believe you. It's like he put K2SO Lite in the movie. It just took me out a little bit. I wish Alan Tudyk would have been able to be a little more creative with the way he portrayed this version of a robot. But yeah, nitpick, I guess. Most people that watch this movie probably haven't even seen Andor Season 2, so they've probably seen Rogue One. Probably forgot about it. I digress. Now, these Superman robots claim to not have any emotion, but by the end of the film, that rule is completely thrown out of the window for comedic purposes. For example, in the beginning of the movie, yes, they have no emotions, but at the end of the movie, Alan Tudyk's character, robot, asks for a name, and it's upsetting him that he doesn't have a name. I thought they didn't have emotions. Who knows? Maybe that's because he gave himself a lobotomy halfway through the film, which, yes, I'm not making a joke. I do make lobotomy jokes a lot. This one's not a joke. Now, this is one of the main problems of this film. It dilutes the serious and revering nature of the Superman theme and character with humor. It's James Gunn humor across the board. A little bit toned down, but it just exudes James Gunn so much that I find trouble in respecting this film on a deeper level. Genuinely, the movie's actually funny at times. My audience was laughing. Both times I saw it, both audiences were laughing. But it just broke my immersion with the world too many times. And I just didn't see it coming. I was fooled. I thought this was going to be a little more reverent take on the character. Anyways, they magnify solar rays onto Superman's body. He heals up and then returns to the fight to basically immediately once again get shit on by the hammer of Baravia. Now, during the fight scene, we meet Lex's girlfriend, an over-the-top bimbo type that feels like she belongs in those scary movie parody films rather than a Superman movie. Now, when I first witnessed her character overtly taking selfies during a serious fight scene, it gave me whiplash. Like, she belonged in a different movie. The presentation of this character contrasted so hard with the nature of the fight playing out on screen that I had to look over to my friend to see if this was even real. It's this over-the-top, caricature-like approach to the story that completely threw me for a loop when first watching this film. Like, it happens a little bit with other characters too. It was something I had to lean into for the second viewing to really get a sense of enjoyment from the film rather than a sense of pure shock. It's almost like when you're an iPhone user and you open up someone else's Android phone and they have a really weird theme or font setting. So it takes you a while to even just navigate the phone. There's a good operating system laying underneath all that bullshit, but it just takes you a while to adjust, if you get what I'm saying. Now, once you see past the skin, the font, the messages become a little easier to digest, even if they're still just surface level texts from a slightly immature friend. Honestly, I think I cooked there with that analogy, not gonna lie. Now, let's bring it back to the Lex girlfriend thing. Her selfies, her act of taking selfies, while at first just seems completely out of place, does have a very, very huge impact on the plot of this movie, seeing as every selfie she was taking was strategic in revealing the plans of Lex Luthor to the world. So in reality, she's basically one of the heroes of this whole entire thing, despite her coming off as the most retarded character from the get-go. Quite impressive, honestly. It was a nice way to justify the whole fact of her being ridiculous. Still, though, I think the way she played her character and the way the camera showed her character took me out of the film. Nice little twist, though. I'll give it to him. Like I said, at this point, Superman is in the middle of a fight where he gets his ass kicked by the Hammer of Baravia, which is actually Ultraman, which is actually a clone. Now, it's important to note that Lex is trying to use the Hammer of Baravia persona to create tension between Baravia, the United States, and Superman to justify a reason for him being able to take out Superman publicly. Now, it's important to note we do see Superman basically fighting off a terrorist in the middle of Metropolis, one of the biggest cities in the United States, and yet it only takes a few lines of dialogue to turn the entire world against Superman later in the film. It's justified in the sense that they do say words to justify it, but it's not felt. The justification of the world turning on Superman later in the film is not felt when we show so many times that Superman is indeed on the side of humanity. This film was 2 hours long. I felt like it could have been 2 hours and 30 minutes long to give us 30 more minutes of reasoning as to why the world turns on Superman. That is probably the biggest issue in this entire plot outside of nitpicks. Now, here's also where the film starts to show its true colors of being, at times, utterly ridiculously stupid, like nonsensical. So, let's get this straight. Hammer of Baravia comes across the seas, basically a Russian terrorist for what it's worth, beats the shit out of Superman, and then flies away about 5 miles down the street to a beach in Metropolis. Lands, goes into a tent, enters a portal to a pocket dimension, leaves the pocket dimension, and ends up back in Metropolis in Lex Luthor's office. And not a single news camera followed the Hammer of Baravia, an international terrorist, to the beach 5 miles away from the fight scene. Like, I get it. They're not going to know exactly where he's going once he enters that tent. But why do they have it set up so obviously close to Metropolis, his base of operations? Literally, any news helicopter, anybody with a camera could have seen him flying and landing on a beach within eyesight of the big fight. I was like, what? But what this film does is it gives you whiplash so hard that you forget about the stupid things, unless you're someone like me who's paying way too close attention, because he does enter a friggin' interdimensional pocket universe portal back to Lex's office within the next 30 seconds. So you're kind of beat over the head with crazy shit so that you forget about the stupid shit. Seriously, this plot point baffled me beyond belief. And yes, if you haven't seen the movie yet and you're just watching this to get the plot breakdown, Lex Luthor does have a pocket dimension portal system set up around the world. Kind of cool. But again, this universe, you're just spawned into the middle of it with all this crazy shit. No buildup, no justification. If you're not ready for it, you're going to get slapped silly and you're going to realize you're not watching the film that you might have came for, which is fine once you accept it. Like I said, it is a fun movie overall. It's fun. It's dumb fun. Now, the introduction to the pocket dimension thing was the moment I truly realized that this is an entirely comic book world where nothing quite makes sense and you're just meant to accept it because it is not our reality. The problem is, on the surface, this world looks and feels like our modern day reality. So that contrast is very jarring for someone not expecting them to swing this far with the first DC Universe film from James Gunn and company. Now, after Clark is knocked into the ground by the Hammer of Baravia, aka Ultraman, aka Superman clone, he gets saved by a local who kind of has a familiarity with him, apparently. Or maybe this is his first time meeting Superman. I'm not sure, but this guy helps Superman up and he becomes a pretty important character, so to speak, later on in the film. We also get this scene introducing us to a major villain in the movie, the Engineer. Now, she's sort of a shapeshifter of sorts who basically does whatever the plot needs her to do. As far as her superpower goes, they're very undefined, which is convenient for the plot, like I said. She can hack things. She can create weapons out of her body seemingly infinitely. and she has the superpower of being unbearably cringe. The actress portraying her, I'm sure, was just following direction, but any scene she was in, I just felt like she was completely overdoing it. Sort of like the Lex's girlfriend character. They're both just overplaying their hand with the acting, and it took me out of the scenes that they were in. She felt like a caricature of a villain. Because of how silly she was with her seriousness, I couldn't take her seriously. I was never really afraid of her as a villain. Now, normally I take notes during the second viewing of films, but I just wanted to imbibe this film, for lack of better words, purely so I could understand whether or not I truly felt the way I felt about it. So bear with me as I go through some of the sequences in this movie, perhaps slightly out of order. And if I do miss some things, that's okay too. But overall, we're going to cover the rest of this plot, scene by scene, for the most part. Up to this point in the film, we've only seen Superman as Superman and not Clark. So this is where we get our first taste of Clark Kent, and it is very short-lived in a way. We see him going to the Daily Planet. He's kind of stumbling and bumbling his way around. He is a different character, or at least portraying a different side of himself heavily to the public when he's in his Clark Kent form. So that is cool. I think they did nail the Clark Kent side of things in this movie. We see him getting overly joyous and kind of giddy with his coworkers. He's got a slightly different overplayed personality as Clark, which is nice. We also start to see the rift between Lois and Clark happen immediately in the Daily Planet scene. Basically, Lois is jealous that Clark keeps giving himself interviews with Superman, and I don't think Clark realizes that she's kind of being serious about this, because up to this point, Clark has kind of been hyping himself up, seemingly. We don't get much detail on how he's going about journalizing Superman as himself. Obviously, he's not going to tear himself apart, which is actually Lois's job in this movie. She's kind of the foil to Clark in this way. Basically, she's jealous that she doesn't get to properly interview Superman, and Clark is kind of just fluffing up Superman for the public up until this point. Now, this leads us into the infamously leaked 10-minute dialogue scene between Lois and Clark. They didn't leak the whole scene, but it was noted that there would be a 10-minute dialogue scene between Clark and Lois in the film, and whether or not that dialogue was going to be justified was a heavy point of contention between critics and pundits online before the film came out. Having seen the film twice now, I can actually say it's probably one of the best scenes in the movie. One of the only scenes where we get depth in conversation about the themes and ideals and motives behind Superman himself. Now, this scene also serves to damage Lois's character a little bit in my eyes. One, because it makes her come off like sort of a bitch, not gonna lie. She comes off very unlikable and way too pushy in this scene, for good reason, I guess, but it does put you off to the character almost immediately. I feel like she could have used some more scenes beforehand to where we could come to understand her a little more before throwing her into the fire here with Clark, as she does a fake interview, which is actually a real interview that she's recording with Clark. I thought this was going to be sort of a practice run interview when I was watching the trailers, but it turns out I'm pretty sure she's actually interviewing Superman in this scene. She's actually recording it. She may actually write about it. We don't actually figure out where this goes later in the film, but yeah, for all intents and purposes, she's interviewing Superman in her apartment in this scene. Now, we'll go over the second reason as to why this kind of hurts Lois's character in the long run. But basically, in this scene, she's poking and prodding at Superman, asking him why he thinks it's okay to go around and interfere in global international affairs as Superman, you know, with no repercussions, with no regulations. It almost has a Civil War vibe to it, where both sides of the Avengers are arguing over the Sokovia Accords. You know, one's for government regulation, and one says, no, we need to have the power to step over the government when things are going shit. Superman is basically on Team Cap. He's not going to sign the accords. He does not want government oversight. He knows that there are some situations where you do need to step in, or so he thinks. Whereas Lois is constantly jabbing him with, did you contact the Department of Justice? Did you speak to the president? Did you speak to the army? Did you get permission? Blah, 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 blah. Now, she's playing devil's advocate. It's unclear if she personally is on this side or if she's just doing it for the sake of journalism, for the sake of asking the juicy questions that Clark never asked Superman himself. But for all intents and purposes, it does seem clear to me that this is rooted in her own beliefs, but the way she's doing it, it just seems like she's attacking Superman and not preparing him for these questions. It doesn't seem like she's on his side at all. Now, the way it damages her character is basically these morals or these values or these standards that she's holding Superman to are completely broken by herself for the rest of the film. Like, she goes rogue and does a bunch of shit without any permission, the same way Superman does, even though she was just grilling him for doing that very same thing. So by this, we can say that Lois actually doesn't believe in any of these values, and she's simply asking these questions for the sake of asking them because they are important questions. But again, it's very unclear, and her character never really gets to clear this up in the film. We kind of abandon this idea for the most part. And I feel like that happens a lot in this film. There's a lot of cool ideas that are set up, but not quite followed through on, especially in the very final scene with Lex, which we will get to. Also, very important detail in this scene, she does call out Superman for torturing a world leader. Yes, he took the leader of Baravia and held him up against a cactus in order to get him to stand down. So for all you guys, saying that this Superman is so much more morally competent compared to Henry Cavill's Superman, no, this guy's still got some issues to work out too. He tortures a world leader and openly admits to it on a recording with Lois. So yeah, it's a small detail. It's not shown on screen, so it doesn't have as much of an impact as the, let's say, Zod's neck snapping thing. But yeah, Superman basically threatens and almost tortures a world leader to get his point across. I guess it's because he's inexperienced, but also he is 3 years into this. So who knows? This is sort of a subjective thing. I kind of let it slide the first time I watched the movie. The second time I realized what the fuck was going on. It didn't hit me the right way. It didn't. But yeah, small detail. You guys tell me in the comments what you think of that. Now, around this time in the film, we also get this scene where Lex Luthor is basically setting up his new Justice League called Planet Watch. This is a group of supervillains that he's engineered to be superheroes to most of the world. But for him, obviously, he's going to use them for his nefarious purposes, aka for killing Superman. We have what are called the Raptors. I guess they're a sort of group of enhanced humans or highly kitted humans that can fly and take on Superman. They're basically like a group of annoying little hornets to Superman. They don't have any power. They can be taken out by any of our main heroes with a snap of a finger. We also have the Engineer, who is basically this shape-shifting metal-esque techno bitch who can do whatever she wants with her powers. Create weapons, like I said, hack things, like I said. She's just a plot device, basically. And last but not least, we have Ultraman, who the public does not know he's the Hammer of Baravia, and the public does not know he's a clone of Clark Kent. He's doing this presentation on a projector in front of the US government, in front of Rick Flag Sr., who's sort of set up to be a guy who's going to corral the superheroes by the end of this film, but we do not get much of his character at all. He's going to be a guy down the line that we'll see much more of. Basically, Lex is trying to use the fact that Superman interrupted an international war between Baravia and Yajinpur, something like that. I can't find the name. Let me look it up. Jarinpur. Yes, Superman intervened in a war between Baravia and Jarinpur. Baravia being the imposing evil force and Jarinpur being the, down on their luck, poor nation, third world country-esque type. You know the drill. Standard international bullshit. Anyways, Superman interfered with that war, and Lex is using this to justify his taking on of Superman to the government. But they basically said, hey, he didn't hurt anybody. He didn't really cause harm. We don't really have much dirt on the guy to go after him without the public thinking that we're a bunch of idiots. So what does Lex do? Well, he heads on over to the Fortress of Solitude. He's able to access the Fortress of Solitude because, yes, Ultraman does have Superman's DNA, which is the passcode to the secret lair. He walks in, he aura farms for a second, as we've seen in the trailer. The Engineer hacks the computer systems, and she's able to retrieve the full message from Jor-El, aka Superman's dad, from Krypton, that contains the dirt that he's going to need on Superman so he can turn not only the government, but the entire public against him, against Superman, that is. Now, I did forget to mention, in the beginning of this film, it's very important to note that Superman is watching the footage of Jor-El as he's being healed up, Jor-El is saying, hey, you must go to Earth. You must be a savior, a leader for humanity. You must protect them. A very wholehearted message that we can all get behind, that everybody can get behind, that proves that Superman was here for good. However, that message was corrupted during the crash landing of Superman, and we never get to see the second half of the message up until the middle of the film, after Lex and the engineer recover it from the Fortress of Solitude. Now, during this whole hijacking of the Fortress of Solitude, it's important to note that the engineer ends up capturing Krypto. And why isn't Superman coming back to fight? Why isn't he, I don't know, going to defend his super secret lair? Well, it's because Lex Luthor released a kaiju into the middle of Metropolis. Now, you're going to ask, how did it get there all of a sudden? How did it spawn in? Well, it spawns in because it's introduced by Lex Luthor's goons, releasing a tiny version of it in the previous night that then expands like one of those water toys from the 2000s infomercials. What are they called? I guess they're just called water growing toys or expandable water toys. Yeah, overnight, this little kaiju grows from like a dog size to a massive building sized kaiju. And so Superman is distracted by that, giving Lex Luthor the time he needs to hack into the Fortress of Solitude and get the message. This is where we get introduced to the Justice Gang. Now, when they were first introduced, we get this really goofy shot of Mr. Terrific in his high-tech sci-fi floating wheelchair thing. Seriously, it gave me Professor X vibes, but it was so corny just seeing him sit there with his little computer chair. It took me out of the movie. Now, he does aura farm the rest of the film to make up for this goofy introduction, but his introduction made him look like such a dumbass. He doesn't do anything dumb. He just looks dumb to the point where I was just laughing. Maybe that was the point. Maybe that was the point. Subvert our expectations. He ends up becoming a complete badass. But yeah, the introduction of the Justice Gang completely caught me off guard. So the Justice Gang and Superman fight the kaiju. And this is where I do have another gripe with the film and its themes or its messaging surrounding Superman. They introduce these ideas about Superman and his view on the world. For example, with this kaiju, he does not want to destroy it. He wants to corral it, maybe knock it out and move it to a safe location where they can let it live, maybe study it, figure out why it's here, what it is. But the Justice Gang, they just want to kick the shit out of it, destroy it as fast as possible, and kill it. There's also a really James Gunn moment during this fight scene where Green Lantern makes a construct that pokes the kaiju in the eye. Like, it looks like it's about to drill into his eye. And instead of like actually using force, it sort of just pokes. Like it's like Green Lantern can't make powerful constructs, even though we see he's able to move tanks with his constructs later on in the film. So it just came off as a moment to be funny just because, oh, James Gunn is funny. It took me out of the fight scene. Like, why would Green Lantern build a construct just to poke him in the eye? It doesn't even hurt him. It's like made of liquid too. It's weird. Anyways, Mr. Terrific finds out that he can just blow the guts out of the kaiju by throwing bombs down its throat. So they do that. It collapses, and Clark ends up lowering it down into a Central Park area so that nobody gets hurt. Also, this whole time that this is going down, I'm pretty sure it's in this scene. If not, it's in another scene. We have another James Gunn humor mannerism where basically there's a dude eating ice cream in a building the whole time, and it keeps cutting back to this guy eating ice cream while this super serious fight scene is supposed to be happening. And it just, again, does not need to be there. It makes the threat not feel like a threat at all. It just takes the levity out of any seriousness in the movie. And he does this a lot to where you almost can't take the movie seriously by the end of it. And yet the movie is still trying to contain very serious and heavy themes when it comes to Superman. So that whole dichotomy did not work for me whatsoever. Anyways, they defeat him, and Superman ends up crawling out from underneath the kaiju in some sort of Ace Ventura type scene, which again, it's funny, it's fine. But it just, I mean, I guess I don't know how else he would get out from underneath the kaiju, but he's already dead. So maybe we should just have Superman burst through him. That would have been more heroic and still had comedy to it. But I don't know, James Gunn has him crawling on the floor, which just makes Superman look like sort of a dork. Clark Kent's a dork, but Superman is supposed to be more reverent and stoic, I guess, more powerful. He comes off like a Spider-Man version of Superman in this, where he's more goofy. That's fine, I guess. But like I said, the line between Clark Kent and Superman is way too heavily blurred just by the actions he does on screen and by his mannerisms and dialogue that we get from Superman while he's in costume. It doesn't quite create that dual persona that we've seen so many times in the past that I was looking for when coming into this film. Now, this fight scene also serves to highlight, as I was saying, one of the ways they dropped the ball with the themes of Superman. At one point in the fight scene, he sees the Justice Gang sort of just beating the shit out of the Kaiju, and they're trying to kill it. And he says there's got to be a better way to do this. Now, I thought they were setting this up to be sort of a character arc for the Justice Gang. And it is, sort of. It's half of the Justice Gang's character arc that is unfinished. We never really see a resolution or a payoff to this moment, to where the Justice Gang learns that there's a better way to do things. They do end up following Superman into his international fight to stop Baravia by the end of the film. That's one half of their character arc, but they're basically still seen tearing shit up and murdering people, for lack of better words, during that end scene where they stop the war in Baravia. Like, Green Lantern is basically fucking people up with middle fingers in that fight scene, flipping tanks. People are definitely dying because of Green Lantern at the end of the film. So they only learned half their lesson in this movie. We'll save that arc for another film down the line, I guess. Just seemed not so fleshed out for me, but that's fine. That's fine, I guess. Now, during this whole Kaiju fight scene, Lex Luthor is able to not only hack the Fortress of Solitude, he's able to decrypt or translate the second half of Jor-El's message from the beginning of the film, and he's able to leak that message to the entire world all during the fight scene. Now, what does the second half of the message say? Well, it says basically Superman was sent to Earth to enslave humanity, to become its owner, for lack of better words, and to also create a harem where he breeds and creates as many Superman babies as possible with the humans. Yeah, they completely shit on the lore of Krypton and Jor-El, making his father basically Krypton's Hitler, or I don't know, Krypton's Confederacy. I'm not sure how you want to put it, but basically Jor-El becomes a supervillain by way of Lex revealing the translation of the second half of the message that was sent to Superman. Also, the whole world is able to receive this message and react to it in the blink of an eye, and they all just believe it flat out. They just believe it, no questions asked, on an instant, after seeing Superman save them from a disastrous Kaiju event. They turn on him. No questions asked, no plot developments leading up to this. It's just TV tell us Superman bad. Superman bad. There's not even any conflict with the citizens. Nobody's fighting over it. They're just all in total agreement that Superman is bad. Like, they watch a 30-second clip on TikTok and then they go, I hate you now. Even though you've been saving us for the past 3 years, I hate you. Makes no sense to me. The script does try to justify it with one line of dialogue from Lex. He says that Superman is grooming them to trust him before he ultimately takes over. I guess everybody in the world believes this. Like I said, there could have been an extra 30 minutes where we see the world fighting over this idea of now coming to hate Superman, on whether or not they believe the message was real. There was none of that. And maybe there was, and it was cut out. But because the fact that it was either never made in the first place or cut out of the film, it completely breaks my immersion with the universe, with the DC universe. It feels like everybody outside of the main cast is just NPCs. They don't feel like a character in the universe. They feel like a writer puppeteering the world so that the plot can move forward. It doesn't feel natural whatsoever. This would have played out much better in a HBO miniseries, this story at least. So yeah, we get that shot of somebody throwing a soda can at the back of Superman's head, and the whole world hates Superman now. That's it. Unbelievable. Now, after the Kaiju fight is over, after he crawls out from underneath the monster, he goes and has a chat with the Justice Gang. This is where he's sort of at odds with the gang for conducting the fight the way they conducted it. And this is one of the best scenes in the movie, where Green Lantern and Superman are literally face to face, and he says, make a move, Big Blue. And that little moment felt like it was such, I don't know, a comic book moment just ripped straight from the pages. I needed more of that in this movie. I needed more interactions with Superman. and Green Lantern. That was just pure gold. We really don't get too many interactions. I think this is the only time he actually interacts with Green Lantern face to face in the movie. So moments like that, far and few between, but they were just gold. It's moments like this in the film that make it almost worth watching in the first place, despite me saying this movie is a 6 or 7 out of 10 at best. So he sort of has an argument with the Justice Gang, and then he finds out that Lex Luthor is keeping crypto. I forget how he actually figures this out, but yeah, he realizes crypto is gone. He realizes Lex must have gotten to the Fortress of Solitude. So he busts into Lex's office and he confronts him looking for crypto. Now, again, in this scene, we lose reverence for Superman because he kind of acts like a school kid who just had his project smashed. In this scene, he's not very stoic. He's sort of yelling childishly at Lex. I get it. He's very emotional. But this feels more like Clark rather than Superman. And I guess it's there to humanize him. But again, for me, it just came off a little too silly, a little too childish for me. I mean, at one point, Lex is even whispering under his breath, admitting that he has the dog. And Superman is like, see, he just said it. He just said it. He just said, like, just the way he's acting on camera to the world too it's too comical for me. I feel like this scene is okay, but the way they went about writing Superman in the scene went a little too far for me. The whole point of the scene is to reinforce to the public that Superman is indeed a menace because he's seemingly threatening an innocent Lex, at least innocent in the eyes of the public. At this point of the story, Lex Luthor is the good guy to the public, and Superman is quickly becoming the bad guy. Now, Superman realizes he's kind of failed here to do anything productive, so he just flies away. And later that night is where he meets up with Lois for the scene that, again, broke my immersion in the film. And also this scene sort of breaks itself in a way, and I'll explain. Later that night, he goes back to meet Lois in her apartment, and they talk about Superman's ideals. They talk about how Superman just believes everybody is good, everybody's worth saving. And it's good that they talk about this, but we're never really shown this. Outside of the Kaiju fight, there's a couple moments where Superman saves people. He even saves a squirrel. He saves a dog. It's cool that Lois is able to say this, but like I said, we're missing that buildup from the beginning of the film that would have shown us how the public views Superman and how Superman truly is at his core. It's like they're relying on us having outside knowledge of the character coming into this film, which is kind of okay, but within the universe of this film, it doesn't hit hard enough without having that prior buildup to Superman's character. So yeah, Lois is discussing how she's always skeptical of the world, how she's always asking the questions, can she trust people? What does this mean? Whereas Superman just goes in raw to every situation, expecting the best out of people and never doubting humanity. It's cute that they're able to say this, but again, I would ask if we could rewrite this movie to show us this before they have this conversation. Almost everything we know about Superman up until this point is said and not told. Lois is very, mistrusting. She's very skeptical of the world. She always asks the deep, important questions. She trusts no one, whereas Superman is the ultimate Boy Scout. He thinks everybody's got a heart of gold, at least deep down. Everybody's good. He trusts everything. He always makes decisions based on what is best for humanity and not what is right in the eyes of humanity. For example, going overseas to stop a war, in his eyes, yes, he wants to stop people from dying, but in the people's eyes, is he allowed to just go around and do that? It doesn't matter because Superman, needs to save people in his mind, no matter the cost. It's good that they're digging into the characters with this dialogue, but again, because they lack the development of Superman on screen with his actions, they lack the buildup to how the world sees him. They lack the buildup of how he makes his decisions, why he makes his decisions. They just tell us these things. The impact is not felt as much as it should be. Like I said, I think the intro to this movie should not have been him crash landing. I think it should have been him basically becoming reverent in the eyes of the public. I think they should have built him up in the intro of the movie to then have him crash land. But instead, we get what we get. It is what it is. So they have to do a lot of work with dialogue to tell us instead of showing us. That's basically my main issue with the character of Superman in this movie, outside of the fact that he feels a little too much like Clark the whole time and not enough like the icon of Superman that he's supposed to be. The dichotomy is just not there for me. Now, during this whole chat, there is a interdimensional kaiju of sorts in the background, but it's okay because the Justice Gang have it handled. Now, I'm probably sure that they could have handled it quicker with Superman, but this film just uses it as a comedic background element and world building element. It really dampens the effect of the emotional weight of the conversation between Lois and Superman. It's very distracting. I wish they would have gotten rid of it way quicker, but it literally is just there in the background. This interdimensional monster terrorizing Metropolis is there in the background the entire time that Lois and Clark are having perhaps the deepest conversation of the entire movie. And that's where I say the film lacks weight because it fights against itself in tone way too much. Now, in this scene, Superman says, I gotta save crypto. I know Lex has crypto. If I give myself up to Lex, maybe I'll be able to save crypto. Also, the public is hating him right now, so he needs to do the right thing and give himself up because he doesn't want the public to see him fighting back. It's not good. He needs to give up. It's not gonna go well. He's gonna become more of a villain if he just fights back against Lex. So he does the right thing, which truly is the right move in the moment, to give himself up to Lex. There's no other way. He has no proof that what his real parents from Krypton said wasn't true. In fact, there's a point where Mr. Terrific literally says, look, I checked all the sources. Your parents being supervillains is true. What they said is true. There's no shadow of a doubt that this is true. It is what it is. Your parents are evil. So he goes and turns himself in. Lex has him put in handcuffs in the next scene, and Ultraman smashes his face into the ground, getting another hint that, yeah, this Ultraman guy can really beat the shit out of Superman whenever he wants. Now, after they handcuff Superman, this is where they take him into the tent, into the portal, to the pocket dimension, where he's imprisoned next to a guy who we can call Metamorpho. Basically, this guy can change and shapeshift into any different element or object from any universe that he sees fit. And what else would he be needed to transform into other than kryptonite? So Lex has captured this guy, this superpowered being, so that he can transform his arm into kryptonite and keep Superman subdued in the interdimensional pocket dimension prison. We also see that Lex Luthor is indeed in league with the leader of Baravia as he takes him on a little tour of sorts in the pocket dimension to meet up with none other than Superman. We see Lex has thousands of prisoners contained in the pocket dimension. Even an ex-girlfriend who wrote a bad blog about him is trapped here. Again, this film has no shame in being a complete comic book come to life. So you just got to accept these things for what they are and not question them. As soon as you question any of the logic in this movie, it goes downhill. During this little tour, they also pass by what are called the monkey bots. Now, the way Nicholas Hoult portrays Lex revealing these monkey bots is kind of funny. But again, beyond the surface, when you think about it, the monkey bots make no sense. Basically, they're robots that farm hate online for Superman. They're trolls. They're just an army of trolls posting tweets, posting mean videos, whatever they got to do to farm hate for Superman. Now, why couldn't Lex just have an AI system do this? Because it's way funnier to have monkey bots, according to James Gunn. Now, I got to admit, if you're drunk off your ass, high as shit, or you're a 12-year-old, monkey bots might be funny. But for me, the first time I watched the film, I did not appreciate it at all. I just thought it was way too dumb for a film where I'm trying to take Superman seriously. And I think that was my main problem watching the film for the first time. Upon second viewing, I kind of got a kick out of the monkey bots just because I knew they were coming and I knew what kind of world I was getting into. Anyways, I digress. Lex and the leader of Baravia are going to meet Superman in the cell that Lex has contained him in the pocket dimension. And who do they have with them but the very person that helped lift up Superman after he lost his fight in the beginning of the film? The citizen guy who said, hey, Superman, you always save us. It's time for me to save you. So he helps him get up from that fight. Told you he was going to come into play. Now, the reason they have him there is because Lex knows that Superman is a big softie for anybody, especially a guy who has interacted and even helped Superman. So they're going to torture this guy to get answers out of Superman. Now, I believe he's trying to ask Superman where he was raised, where he's from. Like it's unclear exactly what Lex is trying to do, is trying to get out of Superman here. For the most part, he asks a couple questions as he's playing Russian roulette with the prisoner, with the civilian. He ends up killing the civilian on the second shot of Russian roulette, and this makes Superman burst out with agony. And this is one of the focused, quiet moments of the film that I actually appreciated. That actually was a show, don't tell moment with Superman. I really appreciated this. It shows that every life form, every human, every civilian, especially the ones close to him or have even gotten close to him, are highly valued in Superman's mind emotionally. This is the emotional core of Superman on screen right here. So I really appreciate that they have this scene and they let it play out like this. The guy dies and Superman is instantly wailing and crying. And this also deeply affects Metamorpho, the guy who's keeping him there with the kryptonite on his hand. Now you might ask, now why is Metamorpho agreeing to help Lex? Well, because Lex has his baby held captive in a cell right across from him. But Lex, showing his true evil colors, not that he already wasn't evil from holding a baby captive, obviously he kills the guy in front of Metamorpho, and this makes Metamorpho realize, well, maybe he could just kill me and the baby at any instant. So he enacts the help of Superman. He releases the kryptonite and he builds a miniature sun with elements from his hands and heals Superman. And we get this really awkward silhouette of Superman in the cell, like re-healing his body. And he does this weird like twerk motion, like Tina from Bob's Burgers. And because of the way they directed David Cornsweet on screen, I couldn't help but laugh. Like it just looks way too silly the way he's reforming himself. It loses aura for Superman. It was a negative aura scene for Superman. But yeah, Superman then busts out of the cell. And here's where we get, I don't know, arguably one of the dumbest sequences in the film. I don't know how to put this any other way than Superman almost drowns in a Tetris river. The CGI was god-awful in this scene. Basically, the pocket dimension is contained, but only slightly. There's like a black hole in the pocket dimension that sucks everything that gets close enough into it. And as it's doing so, it's sucking this like sea of Tetris cubes. I shit you not, like it literally looks like Tetris cubes. And Superman gets sucked in to this ocean of Tetris cubes. And he ultimately ends up being saved by himself as he uses his ice breath to blow himself out of the hole, out of the black hole. Yeah, it's ridiculous. Anyways, during this whole time, the reason why he's able to escape is because Lois enacts the help of none other than Mr. Terrific. Now we got to rewind. I said this review was going to be jumbled because I'm going off the dome. We do rewind. While Superman is imprisoned, Lois goes on a little journey to find help for Superman. She does this by going to the Hall of Justice to meet up with Green Lantern, Hawkgirl, and Mr. Terrific. It's at this point that Mr. Terrific, Hawkgirl, and Green Lantern sort of deny her request to help Superman because they don't want to get involved in what they think is politics. You know, Green Lantern says, do I think Superman is evil? No, but I don't get involved in political things. So we're just going to let this one slide. So she storms out of the building, but Mr. Terrific comes after her and says, you know, I kind of want to piss Green Lantern off, so I'm going to help you. It's a pretty badass scene, you know? Mr. Terrific defying the direction of Green Lantern to go save Superman. Really cool. But when they're going to get into Mr. Terrific's spaceship, the garage door lifts up and it's just super slow for comedic effect. And it really ruins the gravitas of the scene and the script for me. Like a lot of these jokes are in the script just because, I don't know, maybe James Gunn thinks everything needs to be funny, so that will keep our attention. But for me, it just takes me out of some of the scenes and it loses aura for the script overall. It gives you a weird feeling at the end of the film where you can't take the main message and themes as seriously as you want because half the film is played out as a comedy. But yeah, it just feels like one of those scenes that belongs in a bad Marvel film or a parody of a Marvel film. That's what it felt like. But yeah, they get into the spaceship while Clark is being held in the pocket dimension, and we get what is one of the most badass scenes in the film. Actually, the most badass scene in the film, and it goes to Mr. Terrific. He tracks down Clark's location. They end up on the beach at the encampment where Lex is holding the portal to the pocket dimension. And Mr. Terrific puts a bubble shield around Lois and then fights off an entire army of advanced soldiers, basically. He uses his balls. He basically drops his balls on Lex's army. Literally, he has these orbs that project things and help him fight and shoot things and take people out. It's sort of an unbelievable scene. Like, nobody got a shot off on this guy. Like, he's seemingly just a normal human who's really smart, and nobody was able to land a single shot on him the entire time. But the way that the scene is shot, it's pretty compelling. The dude's flying around, he's controlling his orbs, and there's a needle drop where a song plays. Most James Gunn moment of the entire film, but it's the most badass moment. The whole time, Lois is looking up at this guy like, holy shit, this is the guy. This is the guy. And despite this scene being so damn cool and making Mr. Terrific have the most aura out of anybody in the entire film, it pissed me off simultaneously because a scene like this, there should have been a scene like this that goes to Superman. Not once in this movie does Superman save Lois directly. Not once in this movie does Superman do something where Lois looks around and says, holy shit, that's Superman, holy shit. Like, I get it, they've been together for a bit now, so this kind of scene probably happened before the movie even started, but it would be nice to have that scene in the movie. Instead, that scene goes to Mr. Terrific. I'm glad he has the scene, but we needed a scene like this between Superman and Lois, and it just doesn't happen. I only realized this upon second watch, but yeah, Lois never gets directly saved by Superman. She never once is in complete awe of Superman. She never gets that moment. So yeah. But anyways, this finally ties back into the scene where Superman is, again, blowing himself out of the pocket dimension. He escapes with Metamorpho, the baby, and Crypto, and they get out in the nick of time because Lois and Mr. Terrific were able to keep the portal open just long enough for Superman and friends to escape. Cool. Well done. Probably the worst scene in the movie is where he's escaping the pocket dimension. It just looked bad. It felt dumb. It was triumphant for the character, but it just took me out of the movie. The CGI, the circumstances around it, everything. And it just felt like a video game scene, to be honest. A video game cutscene. That's what it was. Now, this is sort of the second act where Clark is at his lowest. You know, the world hates him. He's been weakened by lack of actual sunlight, and he gets out of the pocket dimension at his weakest moment in the film, outside of the beginning of the film. So Lois takes him back to the Kent farm so he can heal up for a couple of days. This is where we truly get to interact with Superman, aka Clark Kent, and the Kent family. And I don't know if I buy the scenes with this family. They're very cliche, very on the nose. We don't get much character development out of the Kent family. They're just there to say, like, oh, we love you, son. We're so happy that you're alive and, you know, you're the best. And then Superman leaves. That's pretty much it. Pretty much it. There's one cheeky little scene where Pa Kent starts crying and he says, I'm so proud of you, son. And it just felt like that scene was there because we needed to have a scene where Pa Kent says that. It just didn't feel as authentic as I thought it should, as fleshed out as I thought it should as well. It's very brief, but nice moment, I guess, in theory. Now it's at this point that we see that the Baravian War is raging on. The leader of Baravia is again trying to take out the people of, what is it called? Yavanpur? Jaranpur, whatever. The Middle Eastern, European, whatever war is back at it again because of Lex. And also at the same time, Lex has opened up the pocket universe to tear a hole in the fabric of reality in the middle of Metropolis. It's literally splitting the earth in half, opening up a rift. Mr. Terrific did warn that this could happen earlier in the film, so it is justified a little bit. It doesn't come out of nowhere. But yeah, Lex is splitting Metropolis in half for what it's worth. And at the same time, Baravia is invading Jarinpor, whatever the country's called. So Superman has to make a decision. Does he save Metropolis and defeat Lex, or does he go stop the invasion of Jarinpor? Turns out he doesn't have to make a decision at all because he's inspired the Justice Gang to now take political action against Baravia. Well done. I guess one half of the character arc for the Justice Gang is complete now, despite the fact that they do go in and basically murder the shit out of a bunch of Baravian soldiers. It's not explicitly shown that they're murdering soldiers, but Green Lantern is flipping tanks on people and just willy-nilly launching people into the air. Some of them died. He's killing people for sure. That fact is never addressed, though, and it's not confirmed. But if you use a little bit of logic, there's people dying. He's murdering people. Oh, also, almost forgot to mention, Hawk Girl literally just straight up kills the president of Baravia. Like she drops him out of the sky, like several hundred feet. We don't see him dying, but he's dead. He's not a superhero. He's just a fat retard. So he's dead for sure. So yeah, Justice Gang character arc still needs to be completed at a later date, which is actually fine, I guess. This is going to be an ongoing series, but for a contained film, it is a little iffy, to say the least. So like I said, only half of the Justice Gang character arc is complete. Yes, they're participating in the war. They're still doing it in Green Lantern's way of just going in and fucking shit up without a second thought. Yeah, I'm pretty sure Superman would have done it in a more controlled way. Basically, he wouldn't have been happy seeing what Green Lantern actually did and how he handled it. But it's okay because Clark is preoccupied with the Engineer and Ultraman. Now, this is how the Engineer attempts to defeat Ultraman. She wraps herself around Superman and then shoves her fingers down his throat and infests his lungs and his brain with her techno body bullshit. And the CGI does not look good. At one point, Superman flies really high up into the sky and lets himself fall so that he can basically survive the impact compared to the Engineer. And then he ends up pulling the Engineer's fingers, for what it's worth, out of his mouth. And it's kind of disgusting, but the CGI just, it looks okay, I guess. But yeah, the Engineer is down. She's knocked out. But he still has to fight Ultraman, who takes off his mask and reveals himself to be the Winter Super. Yeah, he's basically the Winter Soldier version of Superman. He's got long hair. He's a darker in-tone character, but he's got the same superpowers as Superman because he is a clone, a very dumb clone that needs Lex Luthor to shout out vitamins and bra sizes in a battleship-esque manner to control him. Still, yeah, guys, that's how Ultraman is controlled. Lex shouts out coordinates like B12, A1, 34D. It's ridiculous. I get why James Gunn did it, but he didn't justify it enough for me to buy into. Ultimately, Ultraman is defeated by Superman tossing him into a bus that gets sucked into the interdimensional rift in Metropolis, and he goes down into a black hole, never to be seen again for now. It's fine. It's fine. It's a very anticlimactic way to defeat Ultraman, but Ultraman is not the main villain. That's Lex, so I kind of understand it. But the whole final battle between Superman and Ultraman was just sort of lackluster. It didn't bring any emotional gravitas. I mean, you're fighting a dark version of yourself, and your first instinct is just to kill the guy in a black hole. There's no trying to talk to him. There's no trying to reason with him. There's no trying to understand this villain. He just kills him. When in the whole first part of the movie, Superman is trying to say like, hey, there's a better way to deal with these evil or these destructive entities. There was no attempt like that from Superman when it comes to his clone, which for what it's worth is basically family. Basically the only family he's got outside of Supergirl is his evil twin. But no attempt to brainwash him, no attempt to reason or speak with him. He just fights him and kills him. Now, because of the way it's shot and because of the way the sequence goes down, most people are going to glaze over this fact and not have any issue with it. The same people that had issues with him killing Zod, most of them are likely going to completely ignore the fact that he does the same thing with this villain simply because, oh, it's okay, he's a clone. Oh, it's okay, it's because Lex Luthor was controlling him. That's why you can kill him. He's still a person. He still has DNA shared with Clark, but he just kills him. Interesting. Interesting. Now, it's at this point that Krypto, Mr. Terrific, and Superman fly up to Lex Luthor's building. Superman knocks the shit out of Lex and continues to monologue on Lex. They both have a shouting match back and forth where they explain their motivations, and Superman literally says, I am a human. That's what you don't understand, Lex. I am a human, just like everybody else. I wake up, I don't know what to do. I put one foot in front of the other and I go for it. I make mistakes. That's my biggest strength, is I am human too. Like, it's cool. Like, yeah, love that, Superman. But the script did not do enough build up to this monologue to make it hit. So much so that after this, when the movie ends, nobody in my showing was clapping. And I believe the reason why is because the film built or didn't build itself up enough to this emotional climax that it lacked emotional weight with the audience by the time it was all said and done. And so while there was cheering and clapping and laughs and interactions during the film, especially at the superficial moments in the film, like the comedy beats, a lot of people were laughing, the emotional resonance did not exist enough with the audience to generate so much as a clap after the film ended. And these people were day one premiere preview night, Amazon Prime, 2 days early, dressed in capes, Superman costumes type of viewers. And they still did not clap when the film was over. Packed theater. These are the fans of the fans, the super fans, if you will, for lack of better words. And nobody clapped when the movie was over. Interesting. But yeah, Lex and Superman get a little back and forth where they explain their motivations, they explain their characters, and it's sort of supposed to be an emotional resolution of the whole conflict. And we find out that, yes, Lex Luthor did indeed orchestrate the entire Boravian War so that he could kill Superman. How did we find this out? Well, earlier in the film, as I said in the beginning, the selfies taken by Lex's girlfriend had evidence in the background of each of them, enough so that the Daily Planet, Lois, girl with the big tits, and Jimmy Olsen were able to piece together and leak all of this to the press so that by the time the climax of the film happens, we see a news report taking down Lex. We don't, however, get any resolution on the fact that Superman is still supposed to be here to control and breed with humanity. That whole thing, that whole side plot, never resolved. Apparently, that's still the case. Apparently, the message sent from Jor-El was still the same message. It wasn't debunked. It wasn't proven to be fraudulent from Lex. It wasn't proven to be an altered version of the message. Nope. Apparently, Superman was still sent here to be an evil bastard. And the public, just because Lex is now bad, the public is now on Superman's side. There's no resolution to that. There's no true resolution to that plot arc at all, which is cool, I guess. Wasn't enough time for it, or it didn't make sense for the script they had written. Whatever the reason is, it just felt a little strange and a little rushed at the end. Now, quickly, I want to get back to something that I said in the beginning of the film, where the comedic bits from James Gunn often interfere with the emotional resonance of the script and the story itself. This happens in this scene where Superman, Krypto, and Mr. Terrific are finally confronting Lex at the climax in his office, basically after the little back and forth that Superman have, both proclaiming their motives, proclaiming why they're right in the story and the other is wrong. We're about to get a juicy piece of retaliation or a retort from Lex in this argument. And before we can hear what he was going to say, before we can flesh out the conversation and really dive into the meat of the conflict between Superman and Lex, Lex gets chewed up like a dog toy by Krypto. Like, this movie, as soon as it's about to get interesting and as soon as it's about to reach depth, the jokes come in and ruin everything. Despite how funny they may or may not be, they just sweep the depth out from underneath each scene a lot of the times when the comedy comes in. That's exactly how it feels. And they did it at the climax of the film in the what is probably the most important conversation, especially the most important conversation that our main hero and our main villain have. They just cut it short with a funny haha moment from James Gunn. And that's why I feel like it might have been better if James Gunn was not the main writer, maybe even not the main director. But I digress. That's how the climax of the film ends. The main climax between our hero and villain ends with a crypto joke. You could have still had this joke, but at least let the scene play out a little bit longer so we can have both. But we can't have our cake, and we can't eat it too. Crypto shit all over our cake. Anyways, now the true end of the film, the true emotional beat that we get is when Superman flies back to the Fortress of Solitude for one final scene, where he finally gets to rest and heal up while he watches videos of his parents. In the beginning of the film, he was watching the footage from Jor-El and his mom from Krypton, because that's where he believed his values came from, where his character came from. But now by the end of the film, justified or not, he believes his values came from the Kents, his foster parents. So instead of listening to the tape of Jor-El, he's now watching home videos of his life with the Kent family. Now, emotionally, this does make sense, but it still lacks a lot of the resonance that I wish it had for a multitude of reasons that I've sort of broken down as we've gone along with this rant of a review. But also, there's one final comedic beat, because James Gunn just can't resist ruining emotional climaxes with comedic inserts. And that is the insert of the cousin of Kal-El, the cousin of Superman, Supergirl, who crash lands into the Fortress of Solitude, revealing that she was out partying on another planet, getting drunk on a planet with a red sun. I guess this is part of her character in the comics, but at this moment in the film, it interjects the emotional part of the climax so harshly that I think it takes a lot of weight off of the film. And this is why I say this is a film to be casually viewed by mostly children and super normies that don't need something more profound out of the movie, which is fine. Which is why when I watched this on my second time, I was able to more easily accept these ideas and accept this tone from the film, which is why I enjoyed it significantly more the second time around, and which is why I'm going to go watch it for a third time to see exactly how I feel about it. And I'm going to be doing a live stream on this channel, so stay tuned or go watch that live stream if it's already been done by clicking my profile. Now, overall, let's go through the film. I know for the most part, this was a huge rant, a huge, just jumbled mess of my thoughts. So I hope you were able to stick with me during this whole thing, because I barely was. My ADHD brain was flying all over the place. I have too much to say. Had I done a scripted review, it would have been much more in depth. It would have been much more structured, which that is coming, by the way. I'm going to do a visual breakdown, rant, review, scene by scene, and show as much of the film as I can, like I normally do on this channel. But I just needed to rant to the camera, get my thoughts out there on this film. I'm sure there's a lot of things I missed, but overall for me, the film peaks out at around a 6 to 6.5 out of 10, 7 out of 10 if I'm drunk on a good day, or maybe a bad day when I just need to pick me up. This is a fun movie overall. I think if you can just let your expectations go at the door, I think if you can turn your brain off and just have fun, this movie will give that to you. A lot of fun moments, a lot of fun characters. I think the best characters in the film were Lex Luthor, Green Lantern, Mr. Terrific, I think takes the cake. And then close seconds were, I think, Clark Kent and Jimmy Olsen, surprisingly. Those two guys brought some levity to the film, even if only for like 30 seconds here and there. I do like the character of Superman Clark Kent, and I do really like the character of Jimmy Olsen. I skipped over Jimmy Olsen's scenes in this review because, well, I skipped over them because I have massive ADHD brain right now, and there's a lot of stuff in this plot. But yeah, Jimmy Olsen was cool. He was funny. His scenes didn't bring a lot of weight to the film, so I felt they were easier left out. He was the main reason why the evidence from Lex Luthor's girlfriend was able to get leaked, but other than that, he's not featured too heavily in the film. So yeah, Jimmy Olsen stood out. What a good guy. Funny guy. But yeah, that's my immediate reaction, review, rant, breakdown of the film. I'm going to do a more formal one soon via live stream and When the movie comes out on HBO Max, I will break down the film in its entirety. But until now, enjoy the review, have a great day, and I love you 3000.